As a doctor's wife, you ought to dress properly. That's what my sister-in-law said to me, looking down on me. I guess to her I'm a lesser being. My name is Emily, and I work as a nurse in a general hospital. I met my husband, Ethan, at this very hospital 5 years ago. He was a medical intern back then, and as we cared for each other amidst our busy schedules, we grew close and eventually started dating. Although we often couldn't find time to see each other due to work, after 5 years of dating, he proposed to me this year. Ethan comes from a family of doctors. I wonder if they'll accept me. Today, we're visiting his parents to formally announce our engagement, and I can't help but feel anxious and a bit weak. Hey, have confidence in yourself. After all, I chose you. If anything happens, I'll be there for you. Ethan reassured me, and I felt a bit relieved. Ethan's father runs his own practice, and his brother is the successor. His mother and sister-in-law are homemakers. Even Ethan's aunt and uncles are doctors, making it a typical family of medical professionals. On the other hand, I lost my father at a young age and was brought up in a single-mother household. Wanting to become independent as soon as possible to help my mother, I decided to become a nurse. I studied at a public university thanks to a scholarship. I'm grateful to my mother who raised me, but I'm worried about the inevitable comparisons that'll be made. Having heard about how strict his parents were, I was incredibly nervous by the time we arrived at Ethan's house. To add to that, not only his parents, but also his brother and his wife and other relatives were there, as Ethan had announced he was bringing his fiancée. After introducing myself to each one, I bowed deeply. "So, Emily, what do you do for a living?" asked my mother-in-law, noticing my anxiety. "I work as a nurse. I met Ethan when he was a medical intern." As I spoke, Amy, the wife of Ethan's brother, interjected. "A nurse? Are you aiming for a more privileged marriage?" she asked, with a hint of mockery, which caused me to shake my head frantically in denial. "No way, that's not it at all." As I tried to explain myself, Ethan's uncle muttered, "There are nurses who aim for medical interns." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. "What about your family? What does your father do?" Amy asked, and my voice faltered. "My father passed away when I was young." Seeing Amy's knowing look, I felt lost for words. "So you were raised by a single mother? I've heard of women who marry doctors for money," she said with an exasperated sigh. Ethan, sensing my distress, raised his voice in frustration. "Amy, isn't it rude to say such things at our first meeting? Emily is a hard-working person. She didn't want to burden her mother, so she put herself through public university. I've never seen a nurse as dedicated as her." His words made me blush. Amy apologized with a smile, but her eyes didn't hold any warmth. "I'm not ashamed of being raised in a single-parent household, and I certainly didn't marry Ethan for his money. But feeling unable to stand up for myself, I was on the verge of tears. Then Ethan's quiet father spoke. "It's impressive that you made it to a public university. Our sons weren't the sharpest tools in the shed. Well, we basically bought their way in with money." He said it with a straight face, but it was clear that this was his father-in-law's idea of a joke. Ethan and his brother-in-law had always been top performers since their school days. "You know, neither my brother nor I have fully grown up yet." With this exchange between the father-in-law and Ethan, the tense atmosphere loosened. Speaking of not growing up, Amy, Ethan's sister-in-law, seemed to be stuck in her parents' shadow. The brother-in-law shot a quick glance at Amy and made a sharp comment. Amy apparently graduated from a prestigious all-girls school. It's a school where, even without much academic achievement, one could enroll if they had enough money. She came from a wealthy family, and her marriage to the brother-in-law was arranged, it seems. His comment must have rubbed her the wrong way. Amy glared at the brother-in-law. "Don't be rude. By lineage, I outrank you. Don't compare me with a child from a single-mother household." She then turned her harsh stare towards me. I had heard from Ethan that the brother-in-law and Amy didn't have the best relationship. Amy's high and mighty attitude apparently irked the brother-in-law. What's more, for some reason, Amy had suspicions about her husband's fidelity and would throw fits. She suspected that one of the administrative staff at the clinic might be his mistress and kept blaming the brother-in-law. The clinic where the father-in-law is the director isn't that big. There are only about 3 administrative staff. Though all 3 of them are young and attractive, Ethan insists that his brother wouldn't be foolish enough to get involved with an employee. Apparently, she misinterpreted some business emails between him and the staff. I never expected to witness a marital spat upon first meeting them. While I was feeling flustered, my mother-in-law stepped in to help. "Stop it. Arguing like this is unsightly." Chastened by their mother-in-law, the brother-in-law and Amy quieted down. Turning to me, the mother-in-law spoke softly. "There will be times when you face harsh words from those around you. Emily, are you prepared to marry into a family of doctors?" Faced with her question, I nodded firmly. There had been plenty of times when I was envied by senior nurses after starting to date Ethan. Ethan also experienced teasing from his colleagues about dating a nurse. Despite it all, we didn't lose heart, and our bond deepened. All I can think about is marrying Emily. I hope you can all watch over us. No one objected, and they congratulated our upcoming marriage. Considering how strict his parents are, I expected them to object. But contrary to my expectations, both the father-in-law and the mother-in-law kindly accepted us. The only one who seemed unsatisfied was Amy, which concerned me. With the successful completion of our marriage introduction, we got registered. Our relationship didn't change just because we got married. The one thing that changed was the frequent invitations from Amy. "Let's go shopping tomorrow. I'll teach you how to dress appropriately as a doctor's wife." Amy often used the phrase, "doctor's wife." I was initially surprised at her invitation to go shopping, especially after her condescending attitude at our first meeting. But observing her, it seemed like she wanted to assert her dominance over me. She would buy and flaunt clothes that were beyond my pay grade. Even today, as we went to the boutique, Amy was buying loads of branded clothes. Seeing the amount, I couldn't help but marvel at how much her husband was earning. "I've told you before, why don't you quit nursing? Supporting a busy doctor husband is the wife's duty, isn't it?" While having tea after shopping, Amy chimed in. Here we go again, I thought. She keeps telling me every time we meet that I should become a homemaker. I consider nutrition. I've never used prepackaged meals. My floors don't have a speck of dust. Are you doing your part as a doctor's wife? Sure, sometimes we rely on ready-made curry pouches and the dust accumulates. It's made me doubt myself, and I've talked about it with Ethan. I asked if I should quit nursing and become a homemaker. Ethan, with a serious face, reassured me. "I want you to continue nursing. I fell in love with you for your vibrant work attitude." He had told me before that he was smitten at first sight, seeing me treat patients with kindness. Remembering Ethan's words, I replied, "I have no intention of quitting nursing." Ethan understands that too. At that, Amy snickered. "Really? I'm sure a low-bred woman like you will be cheated on soon enough. You're only good for your brains after all." Amy suddenly started to look down on me. I won't stand her belittling my household. I lost my temper and gave her a piece of my mind. "So your only claim to fame is that you come from a rich family, right? You don't even get along with your husband. Maybe you should worry less about being cheated on and try trusting him more." As soon as I'd said it, I knew it was too late. Amy's face turned beet red with anger, and she looked like a fiery demon. "How dare you? A woman like you doesn't belong in this house." With that, Amy stormed off. When I told Ethan what happened, he burst out laughing. "You told off my annoying sister, good. She'll cool down after a while." I had regretted what I'd done, but now I felt better. In fact, I was even a little relieved that the invitations to go shopping and tea had ceased. You know, Amy always acts so high and mighty in every boutique. Is she a regular customer or something? Ethan shrugged it off, saying she just loved shopping, but it was on my mind. Hello, I've got something I want to ask. I dialed up a friend. I thought the next time I would see Amy would be months away, at New Year's, but mother-in-law contacted me the next day about a dinner party. Father-in-law was turning 60, and she invited us to celebrate with a high-end sushi meal. The thought of seeing Amy was unpleasant, but I wanted to celebrate father-in-law's birthday. I figured she must have forgotten by now, and I was looking forward to dinner. When I arrived at the restaurant, I saw brother-in-law and his wife approaching. As soon as Amy spotted me, she marched right over, her face stern. Why are you here? Didn't I say you don't belong in this house? Brother-in-law and Ethan hastily tried to calm the aggressively confronting Amy. You better remember what you said. How dare a poor, low-bred woman like you talk back? Amy's anger continued to escalate. People like you, raised in a single-mother household, are considered lower class. I absolutely refuse to dine with someone of your status. Get out. Brother-in-law looked exasperated as Amy caused a scene right in front of the restaurant. Then a cold voice echoed through the commotion. Then go home, you, came a frosty voice. It was mother-in-law. She must not have expected mother-in-law was watching. Huh? Amy murmured softly, glancing over her shoulder. I'm terribly embarrassed by this spectacle outside the store. Mother-in-law's words were met with nods from everyone present. I only argued back because Emily was being rude. I support my husband so much. Amy seemed to go into hysterics, her voice rising again. It's Ethan's fault for bringing such a low-status woman into the family in the first place. Divorce her, even now. Her words were utter nonsense. Naturally, Ethan wore a bewildered expression. Please, don't get more hysterical than this. It's your fault. You insult my education. The fight between brother-in-law and Amy had officially started. Mother-in-law intervened once more. I had planned to ask about this later, but if you're going to make such a fuss, I'll ask now. Amy, you're hiding something, aren't you? At mother-in-law's words, the arguing voices instantly went silent. Hiding something? What do you mean? Amy's voice trembled slightly, though she was trying to stay calm. Emily told me about your shopaholic tendencies. Amy's face turned ashen. You always talk about a certain department store. One of my friends works there. She had been puzzled about Amy's ability to buy so many brand name clothes. At first, she thought brother-in-law was very open-minded. But would he really let his wife, with whom he didn't get along, freely make such high-priced purchases? Something seemed off. She thought that maybe Amy was receiving an allowance from her wealthy parents. But Amy had proudly claimed that since marrying brother-in-law, she had never asked her parents for money. According to Ethan, brother-in-law was indifferent to money and let Amy handle his salary and savings. Perhaps that's why Amy had free rein to spend. According to mother-in-law's friend, Amy was a frequent shopper at the store and would sometimes spend hundreds of thousands in a day. But her attitude was so arrogant that the staff found her annoying. Also, Amy, aren't you cashing in on a family credit card? This was just a guess, there was no proof. But it seemed to hit the mark as Amy turned even paler. How did you... She had figured Amy, with her lavish spending habits, was also borrowing money. You don't even understand the value of money, yet you flaunt your power around town. Don't you feel ashamed as a doctor's wife? Amy was rendered speechless by mother-in-law pointing out her shopaholic tendencies. The staff has also complained about your haughty attitude. Even father-in-law, who had been silently listening, couldn't bear it any longer. Amy would wait until father-in-law wasn't around, then visit the clinic to complain about poor cleanliness and scold the staff. The way she treated the 3 office clerks she suspected of having an affair with her husband was appalling. She even demanded that they quit if they had the audacity to flirt with him. Upon learning the real situation, her father-in-law feared that the staff would quit if things continued this way. When my brother-in-law discovered that she had been squandering money, he was livid. "How much did you borrow? Tell me everything." Amy just stood silent, not even bothering to apologize. Seeing this, her husband's patience snapped. "You high and mighty woman, I want a divorce. Pay back all the money you've spent." Amy, who didn't expect a divorce, desperately pleaded that she didn't want to split up, but nobody, not her in-laws, nor her husband, nor Ethan, was willing to listen to her. Then she turned to me with a plea in her voice. "Emily, as a fellow wife, you understand how I feel, right?" I couldn't help but laugh at her audacity. "Are you asking for help from a woman you've always looked down on because of her social status? Why don't you ask your wealthy parents for help?" After I bluntly told her off, Amy's head dropped in defeat, and so Amy and her husband decided to get a divorce. Even when she handed in her divorce application, Amy was still causing a fuss. Eventually, her parents came to take her back home. The money she'd spent over time amounted to millions, and Amy, unable to pay it back, went crying to her parents. They paid off her debts, but she's now the talk of the town as the woman who spent her husband's money. It's going to be hard for her to remarry. Her parents are so embarrassed that they're keeping her indoors for now. They've confiscated her cash and credit cards too. Amy, who used to relieve stress through shopping, is now locked up in her room, I heard. I never really understood why she tried to assert dominance over me, despite coming from a wealthy family. Her brother-in-law once told me that Amy had an inferiority complex about her education. She was irritated when I, a clever woman with a degree from a public university, was praised by relatives for marrying Ethan. Seeing Amy, I understood that being rich doesn't necessarily mean being happy. Then I had a question for my mother-in-law. "Why did you allow me to marry into your family? I thought marrying into a doctor's family required a good family background." Upon my hesitant question, my mother-in-law answered with a smile. "Actually, I also married your father-in-law, a medical intern back then, when I was a nurse, before our children were born." She said she had faced a lot of opposition to her marriage from her family because she was a nurse. She didn't want her sons to experience the same hardships, so she arranged a marriage for her eldest son with a girl from a good family. However, her eldest son, who married Amy, didn't seem happy at all. He looked more like he was tired of married life. That's why she wanted her second son to be with the person he loved and was willing to approve it from the beginning. It was a surprise when my second son brought home a nurse. It seems blood doesn't lie, huh? My mother-in-law and I shared a chuckle. From then on, I worked as a nurse in my father-in-law's clinic. I guess he hired me because he liked the strength I showed by not letting Amy's nasty comments get to me. My salary is higher than before, and working close to my beloved family makes me feel really blessed.